Hey everybody, welcome to the broadcast. My name is Gary Gomes. I am a Vedic astrologer with some 35 years experience, and I would like to talk to you about the Jyotish. That's the technical term for it, and how it affects the world, how it's reflected in the world, and how this ancient system of astrology affects your lives. So we have a lot of interesting stuff to cover today. I will not be covering Chinese astrology this week. Um, again this week, excuse me, but we will get to it eventually. If you would like to contact me for a reading or for a Vedic astrology forecast or for a lesson, please contact me at 508-525, excuse me, 0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. Okay, so this week's been a busy week. Uh, I feel like I've been running a little bit on fumes for the past couple of days. And so I'm going to make this hopefully a little tighter than I usually make them, but to hit the major details. I did want to talk obviously about what's happening in Iran, in the UK, and also in other parts of the world. But I may keep those sections down. Uh, we are finally uh, post-eclipse period, and we can see how that's reflected in the world overall. We are still, oh, and by the way, I'm just going to say this quickly. If you want to contact me through email, you can contact me through text messaging at the other number. If you want to contact me through email, GaryGomesG@gmail.com is the best way to get me. And or you can text me at 508-525-0001. If you're interested in our store, Crystal Expectations, please, you can contact me through either of those two devices, or you can directly call 508-990-7898. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, roughly 1 to 6 p.m., and also by appointment. So that's for local people. I can't give up prices. I am one of the more reasonably priced Vedic astrologers out there, but again, that's your judgment. You're welcome to talk to me to discuss pricing or just text me to discuss pricing. But I can't reveal prices in this particular format. I'm sorry about that. And yeah, so, and I do provide a variety of different types of readings, like annual readings and compatibility readings, and you know, when to start things, when to stop things. Um, and I'm proficient in a variety of different systems of Indian astrology. So uh, be happy to help you. But again, contact me at 508-525-0001. Thanks. All right, so the shameless promotion part is over. Let's look at the um, chart. And we'll flip around to a few different charts. I did get some notification that some folks are using the Iran war as a platform to say that um, uh, this is more or less a holy war, and it's the president of the United States is engaged in a holy conflict and stuff like that. Um, the number of reported incidents or the number of complaints is around 200, which to me isn't a really significant stage. But one of the things I do look at for things like this in the chart is whether or not people are either exaggerating or lying. And the exaggeration potential is certainly there because we have Rahu with Mars and Mercury, and Venus is in its exaltation sign. It's in planetary war with Saturn. Venus is in planetary war with Saturn. It'll be over by this time tomorrow. So if people have felt either, so planetary war is when two planets are within 1 degree of each other, and there's some dispute as to how this is calculated. In some cases, Venus is always declared the winner in planetary war. In other cases, the planet which is in lower degree is considered the winner, or higher longitude is considered the winner. So in this case, Venus is naturally the brightest planet in the sky. Um, and if I pull out this astronomical data table, if I look at declination, um, Venus is Venus higher than Saturn? Just rises, sets. Let me see now. This is higher than Saturn. Um, so, but I, I, I was taught the old way that the planet which is lower in degree wins because the planet which is higher in degree is running away. So, so I actually kind of like Venus as a planet. So, the idea that Venus always wins, uh, kind of tickles my fancy, but that's it. But it's not been my experience when I've looked at charts. So, what happens when there's a winner in planetary war? Well, basically, if we're looking for examples, this will make Venus winning in planetary war will tend to make prices somewhat lower, and that hasn't happened. Saturn is the key indicator of inflation in an Indian astrology chart because it amounts to scarcity. So we have seen gas prices increasing because of the war. That's pretty obvious. Yeah, we're talking about um, Mars being powerful in this chart. It certainly is. He has a strong influence in this chart. Venus is stronger if we go down to the lower right-hand corner, and Jupiter is also pretty strong. So basically, from my judgment, planetary war, Saturn wins. It constricts prices and makes things more expensive. And you'll see a separation of that over the next week or so. That doesn't mean prices will go down once this pattern has been set. It's just a little tough to reverse. But we have a Mars, Rahu, Mercury, Sun conjunction. And I think one of the things that this tends to indicate, at least So let's look at legislative bodies. Legislative bodies are judged from the fourth house. There was a resolution to um, kill the president's authority to conduct war uh, or to conduct these military strikes. To be honest with you, I don't consider it to be. It's a military strike. If you didn't consider the bombing of Syria to be war, then you can't consider this to be war. Um, and this is actually instituted under the same principles as were used to justify the bombing of Syria under the war and Libya under the War Powers Act. So, so essentially, since we're only 1 week into an engagement, um, I would not, although it is an active attack on a regime, I would not consider it to be quote unquote a prolonged war. We'll see how long the actual war itself lasts as time goes on. As I told you last week, I do not anticipate this to be a long war. I do not anticipate this to be a long period of time before um, Iran uh, doesn't recover uh, or the administration comes down. Now, if we're looking at the house of enemies in this chart, Saturn is the house of enemies. Saturn rules the sixth house, which is the house of enemies. Iran is getting assistance from Russia and China in terms of intelligence right now. They're also probably getting some weapon support, but that's not verified. Um, and that's just a supposition I'm making. So at least from this chart, it still doesn't appear to me to be a really long war. The moon is the strongest planet in this chart. Moon tends to be one of the fastest moving planets. And while I think the idea that 3 or 4 weeks is a little bit wildly optimistic, I'm thinking 2 months is more likely as a target for this particular war. We'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong, or if, uh, or if some people are just saying that um, the president will uh, honor his commitment and not engage in a prolonged conflict. There have been some folks out there predicting that, indicating that Iran is um, taking out a vast quantity of military bases. Again, I'm suspicious of that mainly because of this Mars Mercury Rahu conjunction. Um, and I'm also a little bit suspicious of the United States government's veracity as well because of the Sun and Rahu conjunction over here. So I so again, I don't trust anybody really implicitly or explicitly when I'm looking at these reports that are coming in. Um, but again, like I said, just based upon the astrology of when the engagement started, which I looked at last week, I don't expect this to be a long conflict. Other newsworthy items. Um, there have been a series of elections in South America, which have, as Jupiter gains in strength, which have increased the number of nationalist um, presidents or premiers in power in South America and also in certain parts of Europe. So I think we're going to see that continue for a while. And again, I wouldn't be all that concerned about that mainly because what we're looking at is mainly a government, um, mainly governments trying to roll back social programming and try to work their way out um, of commitments that they made that they can't fulfill. So, you know, and also immigration. There was an interesting news story I heard this morning, or an interesting broadcast I heard this morning, um, and that was that Denmark, which is socially a very liberal country, has started to um, oh gosh, get to the point of no new immigrants, um, and actually force assimilation on the immigrant population in Denmark, and actually tell Syrian refugees that they should start going home um, they're because Syria is a safe country right now. So it's interesting um, that even leftist socialist countries or left-leaning socialists um, are heavily um, I'm trying to think of the right words to put together. Countries with heavily left-leaning social programs are are telling immigrant populations it's time to go home, or it's time to assimilate, or it's time to um, uh, you know, it's time to learn the language, et cetera, et cetera. And it isn't optional. If they don't learn the language, they lose their benefit. They lose their dependency benefits. So I think that all these things indicate a growing conservative movement, especially connected with immigration across the world, and also more attention on paying attention to problems at home rather than problems abroad. So let me just see if I can. All right. So there is a news story I did get asked from from a subscriber to if I could look at Cuba's um, the chance of Cuba being invaded, and Trump has indicated, according to Newsweek, that he will take action against some action against Cuba when the Iran um, conflict is over. So I'm looking up the Cuban birthday, see if that's likely, and then I'll go to Iran, and then I'll go to UK, which are really the countries that interest me, and then to India, and then we'll go to the main forecast, the main event. Okay, so we have as a chart for Cuba, astrological birth chart of Cuba is January 2nd, 1959, 1 p.m. So I'm going to put that in. Now, Cuba has been undergoing major um, embargoes. It can't really, it's in a state of um, not economic collapse, but certainly economic hardship. January 2nd, 1959. So, but I think they've dealt with embargoes for years. This is not new for them. But the oil embargo for them is pretty bad. There's an oil embargo in place right now, January 2nd, 1959, 1 p.m. because that's something that is they can't look for internal resources for that. Not sure how they got the 1 p.m. time. Havana, Cuba. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and start a new share. All right, so Cuba is protected in that it has Jupiter in the first house. It's in a Mars major planetary period, which is, oh, I'm sorry, it started during a Mars major planetary period. It's in a Mercury major planetary period. Now, as I've told you before, Mercury major planetary periods are inherently unstable. In this chart, Cuba is a Scorpio rising sign. Eighth house lord is Mercury and is in a Mahadasha Mercury Mars up until December of 2026. So it is likely they will be attacked or will be have attention brought to them uh, relatively soon. And geez, it doesn't look like they have much time. So um, if I'm looking at either destructive planets, which K2 is one, or even as early as June 13th, 2026, to August 5th of 2026, it looks likely that uh, the current regime will collapse. Let's see what will be done with U.S. assistance. Oops, that's not the right way to do that. Sorry, folks. So I would say, given the fact the United States is will be in a Rahu K2 subperiod around that time, August 14th, Rahu K2 Mars, as consistent with the U.S.'s chart, the U.S. may actually take some military action against Cuba around, I would say, maybe as early as June, maybe as late as August. Um, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if a new government weren't in place in Cuba before the end of the year. So I think that's consistent with what we've seen so far in this administration. It's again, it's not something which I'm necessarily in favor of as an individual, but it is consistent in that with the current administration's posture in that it's taking out governments that aren't popular. The Cuban government, I've had Cuban students, I've had known Cubans throughout the years, and a lot of them were really, just really um, not at all impressed with the government in Cuba. So I think that's, I would say that's a reasonably safe bet that Cuba will be a target if Iran wraps up quickly. And Greenland, I'm not really so sure about because, and it's not because I think the United States is altruistic. I just think that the United States can get what it wants from Greenland without an invasion. It may get ceded um, certain um, mining rights and certain defense rights, and and that's the way the European governments seem to be moving right now. Let's look at Iran. But yeah, the United States. Oh, and somebody else asked me if I would look at the possibility of terrorist attacks in the United States, and they're very high after March 27th. And let's see, attacks on the president after June 22nd through July 12th. There were, well, we've already been plots uncovered, which would make it um, more likely they would attack the president of the United States. Whether or not they'll be successful, I kind of don't know. I think the ones that have the biggest chance of success would be during this K2 Rahu subperiod. And there will also be domestic threats against the president during this particular period. Um, but I'm expecting the current president to stay in office until his term is complete. But he will have some health issues over the next year or so. Okay, so let's go over here. Let me see if I can pull up. Um, see if I can pull up Iran. Oh, it's really fighting me today. Let's, let me see if I can go over here. Oh, it doesn't like that, does it? Okay, let's try. Oh, let's try opening another chart. Yeah, it doesn't like that either. Let me see if I can do it from over here. Sometimes I can do it from over here. I hope you can still see this, folks. My apologies if you can't. So I'm opening another program, and sometimes I can access it if the current program gets stubborn. Get rid of this. All right. So let me see. Okay, so we're gonna do the screen share again when I pull up Iran's chart. Iran. Iran is it's a tough customer. I'm not going to lie about that. It does have Saturn aspecting its moon. It does have a strong Mars on the chart. It has a really weak Mercury. So July 7th, let me just share the chart with you. So you can see the chart now. And but I'm willing to bet the two critical dates for Iran are May 23rd through June 16th for me, and also July 7th through July 27th. There have been reports that Iran has attacked a desalination um, plant. Um, the U.S. military has not confirmed it, um, but other sources have indicated it has happened. That becomes important to the Middle East because that's their main source of water. They don't have a lot of drinking water in the Middle East, especially in the area surrounding Saudi Arabia. So that's kind of like hitting a critical infrastructure problem. But I don't see how Iran can really. The latest I would give Iran would be November 23rd, but I think it's going to be much earlier. Um, and even if it's getting aid from other countries, it is tough to conquer or to overtake because, from what I understand, a lot of their uh, facilities are in bunkers in mountains, so that those are tough to get to. But the United States and other military attacks have managed to do so before. Um, let's look at the UK. Oops, sorry, that's not the UK. My apologies. What's going on here? Stuff to share. Boy, this is acting really stubborn today. My apologies. The Mercury retrograde is really acting up. Okay, this is not this window. Okay, this is really starting to get a little bit annoying. Sorry about that, folks. All right, we're gonna close this one down. Okay, gonna have to open another window. Sorry. And we'll look at the UK and okay. And the main reason I'm interested in the UK is because of the UK has opted not to join France and Germany in supporting the United States. I have nothing, that's their individual decision as a sovereign country. But also the UK and France and uh, Germany have been essentially leaders in the suppression of free speech in Europe. So, um, as an individual, I'm kind of concerned about that. Okay, so the UK Act of Union chart is January 1st, 1801. We'll use this as the chart, the reference chart, and stop sharing again. And we'll just make sure we get it up nice and running well. All right, so we have, okay, so it's on the screen. You're no longer a slave to my incompetence with this program. And so we have United Kingdom, 526. Definitely some losses in the UK before, or shifts in government before August 29th. Um, I'm thinking that, again, Starmer has proven himself to be a really resourceful politician, so I'm not underestimating him. But it looks like Labor is toast by August 29th, at least from what I can see in the chart. Now, again, I'm going to say I could be wrong about that. Political changes are notoriously difficult to predict with any certainty, but this is not really a good chart for the UK. And some people are looking at the UK and saying, well, they're postponing elections. Why are they postponing elections? Well, the prime minister can actually do that under their system of government. Uh, there has to be an election within 5 years. So but the prime minister can pick the period which is most beneficial to him or her. Now, unless they run up, unless they get a vote of no confidence, which happened with the Tories a couple of times. And I think some people are looking at the establishment of a splinter reform party and acting like this is going to um, hurt reform's chances of um, taking over the government. I think that's probably not true. Um, and the reason I'm saying that is because K2 is passing over this 12th house. There will be I would say, a relatively unconventional government taking over in England, especially by the end of the year. And Rahu enters the sixth house. So I think within a year we'll see a switch of governments. Um, but the individual who took over um, in England or who splintered was a very influential politician from what I understand. I don't know a lot about English politics, um, but I do know that um, it was something connected with reform going too soft on Muslim populations. That was my understanding, and I don't think that's going to fly too well. It'll certainly offend people who don't like the current Muslim influx into the UK, but I don't think um, and I think people care about that, but I don't think they care about that as much as trying to right the direction of English politics. So I think that's more of an issue. Now let's look at India. India is in a Mars Rahu subperiod. I have seen reports of India, several regional conflicts occurring in India. There is some worry in India that Pakistan is that the Afghanistan, or I'm worried that the Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict will boil over into India. Um, there's a good Jupiter period coming up for India, but it's in the warlike sixth house. So between April 2nd and May 24th, I think we can see the outbreak of hostilities occur in India. both foreign and internally, and um, definite changes in the electoral landscape in that country over the next few months, all the way until February of 2027. So you'll start to see changes, and even this Mars. So this Mars-Jupiter subperiod looks better, more politically stable than the Mars-Rahu landscape does. But Mars-Rahu-Jupiter doesn't look good, and Mars-Rahu-Saturn doesn't look good either. So I'm afraid India is in for at least internal conflict until from around April 2nd until July 25th. I hope I'm wrong about that, and I hope they do well. There is, I did want to focus on Turkey because um, the apparent successor to Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened Turkey, which I find fascinating. So let's look at Turkey. Is Turkey up for some kind of conflict? Maybe after January 10th, 2027, uh, some kind of internal conflict or external conflict between January 10th of 2027 and um, more likely January 22nd of 2027 and February 22nd of 2027. And let's look last but not least at Israel, if I can pull that chart up. So it's not my greatest fun in the world to be predicting wars. I don't like that at all. Um, but it doesn't look like it'll be it looks like the region will be in conflict over the next year or so, over the next year to 2 years, but they won't be all one massive war. Um, and again, you may see just a change of government in Turkey from that particular combination of planets forming. So let's look over here. This is Israel. Israel's chart, as I said last week, and I'm not going to change that. Um, Jupiter's in the ninth house from Rahu. Israel is in a Rahu Mahadasha. It's in a little bit of a tough period between now and July 14th. But after July 14th, it looks to be in a fairly good place. Even the Saturn subperiod doesn't look all that bad for Jupiter. One, two, excuse me, for Israel. My apologies. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Saturn's in the eighth house, which is not a good transit. So Israel will be fighting for a while. Saturn, Mercury. Where's Mercury? I think by July 14th, as I said before, they will have pretty much everything what they want out of this particular conflict. Uh, it doesn't mean they'll stop. It doesn't mean that it's fair. It doesn't mean that it's right. But I, I think one of the traps is that you can fall into when you're doing astrology is looking and saying, um, particular government shouldn't win because what they're engaged in is not right. And that's a perfectly legitimate and human stance to take. But um, the planets don't really care about that, at least not in the short term. The planets reflect essentially events that have to do and that encounter um, that cause changes in life patterns. So let's go back to the now chart. And these particular planets right now especially this conjunction, which is still placed um, in Aquarius and will be there for the next couple of months. Um, and we have what's called a Kala Sarpa Yoga, all the planets hemmed in between Rahu and Ketu. Um, this will provoke some big changes. Now, the biggest change actually occurred shortly before the eclipse because we had a cluster of planets in this particular sign. And when you have clusters of planets in signs, big events occur. Um, Mercury is not going to move into Pisces until for about another month at least. Um, Mars is not going to move into Pisces for another couple of months, and Venus will have moved out by then. So we're not going to see, and Sun will have moved out by then. So we're going to see essentially a cluster of planets in Pisces, and but moving into Aries and gradually moving away from this combination. The other thing is, so this will put pressure on people who have Aquarius moons, Aquarius suns, Pisces moons, Pisces suns, Aries moons, Aries suns, and Aries rising. Um, and also affect certain houses connected with those particular signs. But it won't necessarily destroy any one component or any one individual. Um, the planet which is most vulnerable from this cluster is, or the country which is most vulnerable from this cluster, to me looks like it's Iran. Um, Cuba is to a lesser extent, um, but not really the larger, the not really Israel or even India for that matter. So even if there is a conflict in India, it won't really necessarily hurt things. And the same is true of Turkey. The same is true. Turkey really isn't going to answer the picture until sometime next year, I don't think. And that may not even happen. So it's a little bit um, too far away to engage in this um, current speculation about it. I'll keep an eye on Turkey. I'll keep an eye on Israel um, because of because Turkey is a large economy in the Middle East. It's one of the most populated countries in the Middle East. It's essentially the bridge between Europe and Asia. So so essentially, it assumes some importance, tr some strategic importance in the entire situation. And Turkey is a NATO country, so it's that could blow up in Israel's face if they decided to attack Turkey. So we'll see what happens. Um, Let me just, so so we're back in this particular slide. So let's look at the individual signs for this month. That's all I'm going to say about world politics for now. I should say something about Italy, which has decided to take on Germany. There's a conflict going on between Italy and Germany right now. Oh, I don't have Italy's chart. Darn it. Okay. Sorry, folks. Now, Italy is the third largest economy in Europe after Germany and France. Um, all right. So Italy became a republic on June 2nd, in 1946. So let me see what Astrology says about this. although Astrodienst isn't really. Let me see if you see this. Let me see, Astro Data Bank. I'm looking at. All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. Sorry to keep you waiting, folks. I'll just keep on talking, and I'll find my way back to Italy. Italy astrology chart. So there was a resolution passed by the European Union, and mainly um, the financial patterns in the European Union are determined by Germany, and so if a country exceeded a certain debt to a GDP ratio, uh, Germany could essentially um, take over control of that country's economy, or the European Union could take control of that country's budget and force it to spend money in certain ways. Now, this has already happened in um, Greece, in Ireland, and Portugal, and Spain. So, um, let me just, June 2nd, 1946. So Italy was a real broad chart of June 2nd, 46, June 10th, data used June 10th, 1946. So let's look at Italy. June 10th, 1946. So this isn't an insignificant power in Europe. Um, and depending on how this goes, it could spell the beginning of the end for the European Union. Um, so that's kind of significant. 4 p.m. Rome. So sorry about this, folks. 4 p.m. Rome. Italy just said no, they would not accept those conditions. So it's it's important to keep in mind that the idea of states when the United States was formed was actually a collection of countries. So states at that particular time were meant to be states in the context of the European term for states, which was independent entities. But the U.S. gradually became a more centralized federal government. So while there are still states um, in the United States as, which were formed or considered to be independent entities, they haven't had the same history that Europe has had with independent decision making. So these were countries that were not too long ago at war with each other. Nazi, um, the World War II wasn't that long ago. So um, I think that so we have Italy with Moon and Libra, Venus, Jupiter separate. No, they're not going to. They're not going to bow. And the Jupiter separate. Italy is a Libra nation. Venus, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, at least according to the Astrology data. There can be different birthdays given for Italy, depending on which source you take. After March 23rd, they will strongly and rather aggressively push back um, the European Union's demands for economic control. I can't see them acceding to control of their financial of, of their spending patterns to Germany. This isn't a comparatively weak state like let's say the pigs nations. I don't know if you remember that term, but that was Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain who had essentially overcommitted and were considering to be draining the European Union. Uh, and they were put under very harsh terms by the European Union until they straightened their economic act out. But Italy is a significant, like I said, it's the third largest economy in Europe. It's not really, and they have a very tough prime minister, so it looks unlikely that they'll exceed. If they are forced to exceed, then it looks likely they will withdraw, I think, from the European Union, which will probably not be good for the European Union. So I'm just going to stop the share and share the chart for you. Share the chart for you again. This is Italy. All right, so this is the Italian chart. So we have um, it's the ninth house Lord, and Saturn's in the 10th house, and Mars is in the 11th house. So this does give some credence to the fact that they will stand up. Right now, Italy's in a very uh, patriotic frame of mind with Jupiter, even with Jupiter in the 12th house. And overall, I don't think you'll see them exceed to Germany at all. Germany is rather, it's in its own bit of economic trouble right now. Not as uh, dire as some countries across Europe, but still in pretty bad shape. And a lot of these things have to do with um, what I would call overcommitting due to um, European mandates to um, bring in um, immigrant populations. And again, I have nothing against housing immigrant populations, but a country has to look over its primary responsibility, which is its own citizens first. That's just my bias. Um, or it can't destroy itself in the process of helping others. Let's put it that way. So looking back to this chart, so let's look at the actual individual signs. I promised I would get to this earlier, and we'll buzz through these fairly quickly. For Aries, Aries has Jupiter in the third house, K2 in the seventh house. That indicates some change in relationship status, some difficulty with children, and gains of new financial growth. We have Venus in the 12th house for the first time in this particular chart. That should actually indicate this this sign will they be able to start making some money. Mercury, Rahu, Mars uh, in this house. Again, we've spoken about oil prices increasing. That's fairly common. Mars is also connected with oil. And let's see, and probably some problems connected with um, supervisors or with some uncertainty over the workplace. So that's for April 15th to May 15th, if you're keeping track of the actual birth times that I'm talking about. For May 15th, so that's for Aries. So expansion, some difficulty with luck. Seventh house has moon in the seventh house, so increased status. And finally, Mercury, Rahu, Mars, increased expenses, probably connected with oil pricing. Let's go to Taurus. Taurus is May 15th through June 15th, and this indicates Jupiter in the second house, so financial gain, because we have Venus sort of surrounding the first and the 12th house. So that's good for the sign for a change. And Saturn aspects the first, so it won't be able to spend as freely as it would like to, but it will still be able to spend more freely than previously. Um, K2's in the fourth house, some need for renovation work around the home. Moon is in the sixth house. That's not really a bad combination. It just indicates that there'll be some anxiety or worry. And Mars, Mercury, Rahu, and Sun indicate a lot of focus on work life. And again, some good financial gains. For Gemini has, this is June 16th to July 16th, has Jupiter in the first house. Very good for relationships with other people. Somewhat good for work life, although bosses will be very difficult to work with. And you'll have to struggle through a couple of impediments to get what you want. Career life looks actually very good for this particular sign. So a lot of hard work, but career life will actually increase. K2 is in the third house, a lot of courage for the sign. Romantic involvements will increase as well. So this is not a bad month for Gemini, a bad week for Gemini. So that's so let's go on to Cancer. Cancer has no planets in the first house except little Upagraha Cordanda, which is like a small Venus. And Cancer runs from July 15th to August 15th. We have Gulika there as well, so this could give some extra expenses to the sign. But if we look at the second house, there are some financial limitations connected with the sign. Moon is in the fourth house. Again, a lot of focus on status, maybe even focus on education. Um, Mercury, Rahu, Sun are all in the eighth house in this chart. So that's not a good combination. Uh, the best planet for this rising sign is Mars. One of the best planets is Sun, so it should give some limitations on income. And the 12th house lord and the third house lord are in the eighth house. That's actually good for avoiding uh, heavy expenses. Venus and Saturn are in the ninth house, so there should be some potential for financial growth and financial opportunity. But you're going to need to wait about another month and a half to see really dynamic growth for Cancer. Uh, those born between July 15th and August 15th, or those born with that rising sign or moon. Leo has no planets or has K2 in the first house, excuse me, and the Lord of the first is in the seventh. So this is August 15th to September 15th. So this chart will have some problems with allies and also with enemies. It'll be engrossed in fighting for the next month or so. And we have Venus and Saturn in the eighth house. This particular combination isn't bad. It's basically it'll it'll limit resources or limit free rides for this particular sign, but the moon is in the third house. That's actually good for forging new alliances and relationships. And Venus is exalted in the eighth house, which can give good financial boons, but Saturn's there. There'll also be some taxes or some financial risks connected with that, with this particular placement. Jupiter's in the 11th house. That's very good for gains over the next year and even for maintaining positions of authority. K2's in the first house. K2 in the first house tends to do what it believes is right rather than it believes will give it gains. So this sign will be very courageous or very um, ambitious this month. For Virgo lasts from September 15th roughly to October 16th, October 15th, excuse me, and have the Lord of the 11th house in the second house. That creates a kind of a Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination. Um, K2's in the 12th house is a very spiritual side to this chart this month. And we have Mars and Rahu, Sun and Mercury in the sixth house of enemies and illnesses. So this sign should be careful of his health. Venus and Saturn in the seventh house. Venus is exalted. That indicates good potential for relationship partners, but again, some problems because the relationship partners will seem either inappropriate or older. Jupiter's in the 10th house, good for career expansion. And Jupiter aspects the moon in this chart, so that's considered good. For Libra, Libra lasts between October 15th to November 15th. And again, we're talking about moon, a rising sign for Libra. Libra has K2 in the 11th house, so unusual friends. But there's a lot of focus on career for this sign right now. And also some good random luck coming into the sign over the next few months. So that's actually positive, um, especially connected with career. So we have Mars, Rahu, Mercury, and Sun in the fifth house. That does create a Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination, but not a smooth one. So money will come in, but it won't seem like it's enough. Okay. But this is what I would call um, one of the shadowy or um, lunar node Raj yogas because it creates a financial gain because of its conjunction with um, Mars, ruler of the seventh house. So this is actually good for financial gains. Venus and Saturn are in the sixth house. Venus is the Lord of the rising sign is in the sixth house. So it'll give a lot of works to this sign. So that's good. But again, there will be some difficulties. The work won't go smoothly. Um, and there'll be delays or obstructions. For Scorpio has no planets in the first house. The Lord of the first house is in the fourth. Again, involved in a kind of a lunar Raj yoga. The sun um, is in a is the Lord of a trinal house in an angular house, and Mars is the Lord of a trinal house in an angular house. So it's a weaker Raj yoga than, but that does indicate increased status for the sign, good financial luck from Venus and Saturn in the fifth house. In the fifth house, uh, sudden unexpected increases in finance, and K2's in the 10th. unexpected boosts in career through friends. So this looks relatively good for Scorpio. There will be some anxiety or worry connected with this placement, but it won't be that major. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Jupiter in the seventh house. Um, Mars, Mercury, Rahu, Sun are in the third house. This is a good combination for this sign getting what it wants. Sagittarius lasts between December 15th and January 15th. Scorpio, in case I didn't say this, November 15th to December 15th. And so Sag will tend to get more financial gains, get more power and more prominence, also increased possibility for positive action, and some difficulty with supervisors, but definitely financial gain for Sagittarius. For Capricorn, our friend Capricorn, Capricorn has no planets in the first house. This is Pluto. I don't count that as a planet when I do chart analyses. The Lord of the first house is Saturn. It's in conjunction with an exalted Venus. Venus is his Raj Yoga planet or his most important planet. And so that can indicate increased ambition for this sign and also increased financial results. Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Rahu, excuse me, are in the second house. And that does indicate financial gain for this sign. For Jupiter's in the sixth house, there will be some enemies or some opposition to the strides this particular sign is trying to make, and some unexpected interruptions with um, flow of resources or money that's owed to the sign. But overall, not a bad week for Capricorn. For Aquarius, we have that cluster of planets in Aquarius, and this is so Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Mercury are actually well placed in terms of career fulfillment of career ambitions for this particular chart, and also fulfillment of luck and financial growth. Uh, Jupiter aspects this particular sign as well, so that's good for protecting the sign out of ordinary troubles. And Venus and Saturn in the second house, very good for financial progress. Ketu's in the seventh house, unusual relationship partners. Maybe relationship partners will seem a bit irrational at times. Moon is in the ninth house. That's the sixth lord in the ninth house. Luck, but you'll have to work for it. Finally, let's go on to Pisces. Pisces has Venus and Saturn in the first house. This is a good combination. Um, for Pisces go, and let me just say for those of you who missed it, Capricorn goes from, or who noticed I didn't say it, Capricorn goes from January 15th to February 15th. Aquarius is February 15th to March 15th. And Pisces is March 15th to April 15th. Sorry, folks. Um, Venus and Saturn, this creates a very powerful Raj Yoga because Pisces is Venus's exalted sign, and so by definition, a friendly planet. Fulfillment of goals and ambitions. Jupiter doesn't aspect the first house, but it aspects the 12th house, so it means that expenditures will be made on good things as opposed to things. There is still a problem of overspending with this sign. Moon is in the um, eighth house, and that can indicate unexpected financial boons, but in small doses. Um, so again, this sign has to watch out for overspending, especially on taxes, um, children, and work expenses, and also siblings. But overall, this isn't a bad placement. So again, a lot of expenses though for Pisces. So let's look at the time and space map. expect to see problems or um, let me close this down. I'm going to have to open it up again. So we have Mars, and I'm not tracking the eclipse points. I'll be honest with you. But Mars and what is that? We have two planets there. I can tell by Mars and Rahu are in conjunction. No, they're not. Mars. There are two Mars lines in this program and a Jupiter line running through the Aleutian Islands. So basically, this can give some upset in Alaska, in Russia, some communication scandal or some business scandal. I'm sorry, in Alaska. Did I say Russia? In Alaska. And there's a Saturn Venus line going over Western Canada. Um, I have seen a lot of reports that large chunks of Alaska either want to align with the U.S. or want to declare independence. This is one of the regions. Vancouver is not. Vancouver wants to stay Canadian. Okay, so this is Vancouver over here. Um, but there is some interesting schism activity happening over here in Western Canada. Whether or not we'll see anything like that soon is really up to question, but there is chronic dissent in Canada right now among certain regions like Alberta, um, especially the mining regions, and also Montreal. That's Quebec has long not been interested in being part of Canada, but it's questionable that it'll join up with the United States. It might want to become its own country. Um, but this Saturn Venus line does indicate some disarray or um, some problems in terms of wealth distribution up near the Yukon. And there's nothing happening in Western United States, although I will say that this is Saturn Venus line running awfully close to the West Coast that can increase the price of gasoline. That's actually been in the cards for a while now. California gas prices, even before the conflict in Iran, were um, teetering towards $7 a gallon, and it's because of the way that California gets its oil. It gets it from over here, I believe, and is shipped through the Panama Canal over here. So that's extraordinarily inefficient and expensive. Um, so there may be some financial problems in Western United States, but that's all I can see happening out there. That's truly negative or concerning. Moon is passing through Michigan, Lake Superior, Wisconsin, Indiana, and down into Kentucky and Tennessee, and down into Louisiana, and down into Mexico. So what that means is changes in administrations, or else maybe major water problems happening in that part of the world. Um, there's a Mars line going through um, Virginia, really close to the nation's capital, and there's a Rahu line kind of close to it, but actually touching Connecticut. And so the entire area between Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Washington, D.C. looks like there's going to be a political scandal in that region of the world. Political scandal probably in Dominican Republic and Haiti and in Venezuela Korea and into Argentina. Um, Maybe some disruption, maybe some political violence in those parts of the world. By the way, that K2 indicator that I looked at in the U.S. chart earlier still indicate domestic violence, so I haven't ruled that out over the next few months. Um, Sun and Mercury are descending through. Um, yeah, maybe Puerto Rico will have some governmental scandals as well with this combination. Um, the Sun and Mercury are running down into Guyana and into into Brazil, and also there's a Venus Saturn line which can indicate some trouble for, and also into Paraguay and Uruguay, excuse me. So the Rahu line does involve Paraguay and Uruguay as well. So all these combinations is we'll probably be hearing a lot more from this part of the world. But again, like I said, I think the press does a really horrible job of covering events in other parts of the world, at least in the United States. So I have to look at a variety of different sources to tell you what I'm telling you. Venus and Saturn, though, are kind of hitting Greenland, kind of hitting Brazil, and that can lead to destabilization or inflationary pressure. Let's see now. Jupiter is passing over the Azores. That's pretty benevolent. Uh, we have no planets involved with England, France, Spain. Spain is one of the countries like England, which has indicated it is not interested in getting involved with Iran, with the Iranian conflict. And but again, there's nothing happening here astrologically, so I can't really even analyze it according to the lines. There are some lines going through Algeria, Libya, and further south. I think this is Mali, down close to Gabon. Um, so these regions will have changes in government or changes in administration. Uh, Italy has no lines going through it. We have Greece and most of Eastern Europe experiencing Mars and Mercury Rahu lines. So there may be some stories about government scandals coming out of that part of the world, and maybe even into Ukraine, as well into Egypt, Sudan, Angola, down to South Africa. Uh, and I always get Zimbabwe and Zambia confused, but I think over here, this region does indicate some governmental scandals as well. So you expect to be hearing a lot out of Africa on the news, and also out of Finland and to a lesser extent Sweden. There's a Saturn and Venus line running over Saudi Arabia and Iran. That's in fitting with what's going on with the conflict there right now. So all the Arab countries will tend to be, or all the Saudi Arabian, all the countries around Saudi Arabia will be affected. Somalia will to a certain extent. So there'll be some economic pressure on Somalia. And let's see now, and also on Russia and Ukraine and Saudi Arabia and all the rich Arab world states. Um, there's a Jupiter line running up through India, so that's pretty benevolent. Jupiter is in Gemini right now, but it can indicate warring political parties or political conflicts. And there is still some anxiety because of the Pakistani, Afghanistani conflict, I think, going on. And this anxiety is actually extending up into Mongolia and Russia and into Jupiter and into China. Um, there's a moon line going through Ladakh and Bangladesh, and that can indicate more flooding, unfortunately, for that region of the world. And there are some pretty strong earthquake lines or air catastrophe lines going through uh, eastern China, down into Borneo, down into Indonesia, down into Western Australia. I'm hoping I'm wrong about that. That was the first thing that occurred to me. And Mercury and Mars, again, there'll be a lot of communications about that out of the Philippines. And finally, Korea is involved in a Mercury line. It doesn't look like there's going to be major trouble there, but we'll be hearing a lot more about Korea. Maybe they'll express some interest in helping out Iran or something like that. Um, there's a Venus and Saturn line running through Japan and also running through Papua New Guinea. Um, or and let's see now, going down through Australia. So essentially, this indicates some economic pressure on these regions. Um, and there's a Jupiter line on the far east coast of Australia, which doesn't indicate really major problems at all. There may be some inflation there because Jupiter, like Saturn, can cause inflation, but I'm not seeing that as being a big concern. It's more of a concern in this region right here. Okay, so that's about it for me. You can put a fork in me. I'm done. And I'll see you next week. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. And I will make my way to the Chinese zodiac. Believe me, there's been too much going on in the news, and I can't really seem to separate myself from that all that much. I hope you're all doing well. It looks like the snow is almost all gone up here, which is great. And we'll see you next week. I love each and every one of you. If there's any problems with the video, please do let me know. I'd appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your patience while I was looking up the various countries. And God bless and take care of every one of you. Okay? All right. Thank you very much for watching, folks. Bye for now.